All right, everyone, welcome back to the Grace Accept Evolve podcast with James and Ray. How you doing today, James?
I'm pretty fantabulous. Ray, how about yourself?
Yeah, today's actually been a really good day, pretty relaxing day, and yeah, it's good so far. Good so far.
Ah, sweet, sweet, sweet. Yeah, mine's been it's still been active, but like it feels like a really rich active, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm,
a very productive, like completion kind of like I guess gratifying kind of active
nice,
activity, yeah.
awesome. Have you been just like working on a bunch of things, like goals, like vision oriented things, or?
Well, yes and no. I would say I've gotten more clarity about like m- where I'm at in life or my vibration and frequency right now. And then like at the same time too, so I've gotten some insights about that and kind of feel more even more deeply comfortable in my own skin. And then on top of that, I some projects are like some progress was huge progress was made on some projects. And so it finally feels good to have those things be at completion. And yeah. So I feel like I'm moving into a new phase, which feels
Nice.
like lovely. Yeah.
Love that. Um, okay, cool. So do we want to enlighten the audience on what we're going to be doing
Of
for
course.
today?
Of course. That's why we're
Yeah.
here to enlighten the audience
That's right. Yeah,
and
let's do it.
ourselves and ourselves.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, go ahead, James. Let them know.
Okay, so welcome everyone, audience, listeners. Today is a special treat, special episode because we're actually going to use this episode to do more of a introduction. So we're going to interview Ray and myself. We're going to interview each other so that we can share. Actually, okay, so let's give the whole backdrop. After the last episode was posted last Tuesday, and um, I had received a little bit of comment or feedback or on the episode, and then it somehow it just kind of clicked that, and again it was positive feedback, but it clicked that I'm familiar with Ray because we've been friends for so long, and I know like her backstory and her experiences and her motivation and her thoughts and ideas and just different experiences and vice versa of her with me. And then it just really registered that, oh, the audience may not know like our complete history and some of the nuances. And yeah. And so today's a day that we get more personal, I suppose. We get more introspective and we share a little bit more about our background. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, guys, that's what we'll be doing today. James and I have a few questions to ask each other. So if it sounds like sometimes we're reading off of a piece of paper to ask a question, we are. And so that is happening just to kind of, just as a little bit of a guide, but I'm sure that the interview will go, it'll take its own turns and stuff too, I'm sure.
Right. Right. See,
So
we prepared for this interview in some ways,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. All right, James. Well, why don't we get into it? Do you care what order I ask these in, or can I just ask in like what calls out to me strongest and go that way?
Yeah, go with what calls to you, or anything that comes up in your head. I will whatever flows up. Go for it.
Okay. So I want to start off with one of the more basic questions, and then we can kind of move into some of these other really not the basic ones are not interesting. It's just kind of like where people would think we would start.
Okay.
Where were you born? Where were you born? Sorry, that's how you say that sentence. Where were you born? How was life growing up? And do you come from a large family? Yeah. So, answer answer those as you see fit. Where were you born, James?
Okay. So again, for all audience members and listeners, and at some point, really family, because at some point there's a maturation of audience. Share listeners, communication. We're family basically. On some level. So I was born in New Orleans. So to answer that question, yes, I have a large family because
Mm.
we have some listeners around the world. But no, just
Mhm.
um, but born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and what was the second one? What's the second piece?
So, and how was life growing up there,
Oh,
or even just within family and stuff like that?
so born in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States. Yes, I come from a large family. Both of my grandparents had children in the double digits. So I have plenty of cousins and family members and next generations, and yeah, it's a whole lot of us.
Wow.
Um, so with that being said, I guess I'll go into the other question. Is that it was a bit of a dichotomy because coming from a large family on my dad's side, my family was more spread out, and yet they were still really close. And so that was an interesting way to grow up of, I guess, seeing it modeled how to be close. And so even maybe when there's like, I guess growing up as a kid, I wasn't always privy to all the adult activities or behaviors, but as I got older, I could kind of see, okay, there might be like agreements, disagreements, love there, and da 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 da. But they were always very rooted in that, no matter what, we're family. And then so it was kind of like the opposite on my mom's side, because my mom's side is from here in New Orleans and it's a really large family. Even if I go beyond, my just my grandparents, um, and with that, maybe because it's so everybody being in a concentrated space, it wasn't as close. At least
Hmm.
when I was in a section of when I was growing up, everybody wasn't close.
Hmm.
And so it was definitely more of a transition in the family of like, oh, these folks, this section of the family hanging together, this section of the family hanging together. And yeah, so I saw more separation or disagreement um in on that side of the family. And so yeah, that I guess maybe on some level obviously did play a role. Um and Yeah. And so again, audience here, I'll just be transparent that I'm still being private, but I'm also like I'm opening up. So I'm not sharing
Mhm.
everything in detail, but um uh I'm sharing more.
Yeah.
So and so yeah, so growing up here was quite interesting. New Orleans was a fun place. I mean, it was very, very fun. I recall childhood, we ran around a lot. At that time, school systems was more of a neighborhood family thing. So we went to school with people in our neighborhood. So
Hmm.
like where everyone lived determined usually what school they went to, at least in elementary wise and junior high wise. And so yeah, it wasn't until high school to where it's like, oh, okay, I live in this area, but I could go to high school like way across town. And so growing up, it was quite fun because literally I went to school with my friends that lived in my neighborhood. So it would be at least majority of my friends that I went to school, people I went to school with actually, lived around a corner, lived up the street. And so we could go by each other's houses and play on a weekend and then walk home and then, again, to hang out while we're at school, obviously learn and have fun. Another cool fact, I was in the gifted program, or advanced program growing up, in elementary. And so that was pretty cool. And then I went to, I won't go into why, but I went to my quote unquote district school for seventh grade. And well, I'll go ahead and say why. If my mom ever hears this, she'll probably want to smack me on the back of the head. But anywho, for any listeners, my mom waited. She procrastinated in applying for my junior high school. And so I applied late for a few of the junior highs I wanted to go to, and I wound up being on a waiting list. And so by the time my 7th grade year started, my primary option was to go to my district school. So going to the district school, and you might have heard a little a little energy come out on that D when I said it, cannot always be pleasant. At least it wasn't at that time. So I went to a district school to where, let's just say the priorities was not education.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was people from it was my district school, but I guess on a junior high level, the reach reaches out. And let's just say this: primarily, I'm going to school with either people who also didn't have any other options or choices, or for whatever reason, because I'm only going there because I didn't have any other choice at that time.
Okay.
And so that was quite an experience, because I mean, people were cutting class, they were smoking weed and playing just all these games. It's just I'm not going to say it was a reflection of the staff, but the students there, let's just say large percentage of the students was not there for education. Education wasn't their top priority. Let's just put it that way. It was more of a different focus. So at that point, I literally got teased for doing homework and answering questions in class. And so I was like, all right, this isn't going to work. So that was a whole ordeal. Learned a lot about life. And then so after that experience, my mom put me in a Catholic school for the 8th grade. And that was a whole vastly different experience as well, too. And it was funny because later in life, I would see people that I went to from the district school that I went to. And they'd be like, man, why'd you leave? It's like, we're looking for you the next year. And I'd just be like, what? I was like, did you not experience what I experienced? But again, here, that was this whole thing, awareness of different mindsets. So yeah, 7th grade year, district school, that was an eye opener. 8th grade year, Catholic school, that was somewhat equally an eye opener. And then 9th grade year, I went to the high school that I wanted to go to, or intended to go to, and reunited back with my friends and my like-minded folks, at least some people who were focused on education. And yeah, and so that was a good bit. I guess going back to childhood, maybe I'll just stop it there. Is anything else coming up that you want to talk about or ask or share, or shall I continue, or what we got?
I'm just listening to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so where was I going to go with that? So my growing up, I guess to go a little bit. I'm just thinking, audience, if I want to go that deep. But anywho, my household was. I have siblings.
I think what I would like to ask, if that's okay. What do you feel like, because going to the podcast and maybe what inspired you to want to make the podcast and be here and do all this? How do you feel like your childhood influenced your spiritual path and wanting to talk about topics like this every day, if that makes sense?
Yes. So I think the biggest part of the inspiration is that New Orleans is a special place. And so I didn't quite grasp the specialness of it until later in life. And so again, growing up here was a lot of activities, festivals, celebrations, parties, culture, Mardi Gras, parades. There's all these other activities going on. And I'm speaking more about adolescence. So I guess just to be a little bit more transparent as well, I started drinking hard liquor at 15. And so growing up, I just thought that was a normal thing. And I remember even going to the nearby grocery store, or corner store rather, and they'd ask for ID, and just for fun, I remember showing them a student ID, and they still sold me the alcohol
Wow.
anyway.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I started heavily drinking or drinking heavy liquor at 15. And so, I didn't realize the rest of the world didn't live like this until like I
Mhm.
actually like moved, lived for a little bit in Texas. And then it kind of really more sunk in Texas. Which even my first time living, I had traveled and visited other places, but I think living somewhere else makes a huge difference, or being somewhere for an extended period of time to where, it at least allotted me more time to see what habits, everyday habits were different than just like short term,
Mhm.
experiences. And so, yeah. And I guess even with Texas being so close, because it's just the next state over, but yeah, like guidelines, like culture is just way different.
I
And
mean,
so that, uh
I would even argue sometimes that, like, it's not even just, like, the state over. I mean, even I don't know if you've ever lived in, like, Baton Rouge or anything like that. Even the culture here, yeah, people will drink kind of early, but
uh
there are just people I've met from New Orleans that you can just tell, like, alcohol is like water to them. Like,
right,
it's as
right,
normal as, like, going to a freaking water fountain,
right.
And I'm sorry if I say that kind of aggressive. I have a past with alcohol and alcoholism in my family. So when it's so, like, easy, not only just, like, easily accessible, that's kind of what I feel like I was hearing you say, is, like, to be able to go to a store at 15 and show a student ID and them give you alcohol, and then you kind of started saying that when I asked how did your childhood influence your spiritual path and, like, your spiritual awakening process and, like, how it's affected that process for you. So is that like a huge part of it? Do you feel like somehow, because as you were saying it, that's kind of what came out for you. That was like one of the first things you said. Like, I could buy hard liquor at 15 when I asked how they were congruent. So do you feel like perhaps it was maybe learning how to live without alcohol that brought you to this more spiritual process? Or, like, why do you feel like because that's where you went to. So I was curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was using it as a stark example, because I'm sure many people hear
Mm,
things about New Orleans, and that's
mm,
one of the reputations that we have. I think us, and maybe in my limited I say limited travel experience, but in my limited recollection, the only other place where that I've been to in the States where one can walk around with the open container was Savannah, Georgia.
okay.
And so in Savannah, you can walk down, you can be on River Street and walk around with the open container. And so just equally here, um, you can go from bar to bar, or you can be in a grocery store, or you can be up the street, you could, whatever,
Mhm,
you can leave an establishment with an alcoholic beverage
mhm.
and go into another one. And so it was more so to give an example of the lifestyle here, because
Gotcha.
all the listeners and audience members might not be familiar with that.
Mhm,
And so, yeah, so also the festival, and yes, give an example for the accessibility. So
mhm.
growing up in a space where certain things are readily tangible and then within arm's reach, 24 hours a day, does play a big role, or can play a big role in one's development and, our developmental experiences.
24 hours a day and accessible to minors, it sounds like, as well. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
of
and not
course.
even of legal age, which is just
Right.
so interesting.
Yes, yes, yes. And so that started early. And then so growing up here, to get back to your question, growing up here, that shaped my early adolescent development, and
Mhm.
then kind of going into 20s and 30s. Well, I ain't gonna say 30s, but more so like up to about 30.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that was a huge piece of life. And again, like I said, it wasn't really to my mid 20s to where it kicked in that, oh, okay, the rest of the world doesn't operate like this.
Mm.
And so how that plays into my spiritual development is that I've lived in different places and traveled different places, And so what I was saying was how growing up here, New Orleans didn't always feel like home, or it didn't feel,
Mm.
I didn't feel like I totally belonged in the city or in the area. And so in my late teens, early 20s, I started to travel a lot to try to like find my tribe, so to speak, or see, get in where I fit in, or see where I fit in, explore. Um, and then I came back like in my I was still here. I guess I was still here kind of off and on in my late 20s. And um, who was it? I think it was like somewhere 2010, 2011. I was living in North Carolina. Well, 2010, I was living in North Carolina. I came back here for a short visit. And uh, a few days before I was getting ready to go back to North Carolina, my intuition told me to be open to pretty much told me to stay.
Mm.
And I was like, what? I was like, what are you, like, where's this, who, what, doing we're doing a real gut check, looking inside my gut, looking down, like, wait a minute, where's this coming from, what? Anywho, and at that time, I was at least wise enough, or making an attempt to be wiser, because I reflected and I said, well, anytime I have regret about a decision or an experience, it either happened while I was drunk or it happened when I didn't listen to my gut.
Mm.
So I listened for about a year, got back into like the party lifestyle, stuff like that. That didn't work out. And then so about a year later, I was like, all right, I need something different. And again, audience listeners, I'm paraphrasing a lot of stuff. But I was like, I need something different. Looked online, found a meditation group through meetup.com actually. And yeah. And then so that really,
How old were you?
Ever since, huh?
Do you remember how old you were?
I'm not gonna give my age. I'm timeless. I'm ageless. No, but it was my early 30s.
Okay.
And so,
I'm more curious for the fact of like I'm curious how long it's been for you. Like, has it been about a decade now? Has it been?
yeah, no. It's been a decade. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, no, yeah. So
So
I've
this
been
is-
here ever since. And then, so to continue with answering your question, a big part of my spiritual growth and development and evolution or even strength, if you will, comes from the fact that now I live in New Orleans and I get it. Like I realize why I was born here. I realize the specialness of it. I get the side of the city, like we were talking about. Listeners, yesterday we just attended, and me and a few group members, we just attended the first inaugural Soberfest. That we just had a Soberfest, first alcohol-free festival here in New Orleans. And so it's almost like doing a 180 to come full circle of like, oh my gosh, there's an event that that doesn't have alcohol and kind of promotes sobriety. And then even kind of give us more insight and curiosity. It opens up more insight to the other side. Because again, sometimes, like I say, the city gets this narrative or gets the promoted narrative for tourism maybe, or for the economy. It's like, oh, come down here and release inhibitions and party and da-da-da-da-da. But there's this whole other side to the city that is really, really rich and really powerful. And I really feel that adds that energy that attracts people here and that captivates people here when they visit. Like it's a little bit of it is freedom and liberation and celebration. And also too, I feel like the city is very heart-centered. The energy here is very tangible. The emotions, the creativity, the culture, the music. But even the stuff, like I say, taking it deeper, the stuff that inspires the music, inspires the creativity, inspires the emotional connection and the friendliness or the conversations that are had. I get it now. And so to answer your question, that was a huge piece to kind of spiritually grow or spiritually evolve, quote unquote, in the city that I was born in, around my family members, because
Yeah.
I saw that it was very different than if I lived somewhere else and I couldn't communicate with them. But,
And
it's different being in the same city. And then also added being in the same environment that has these childhood memories and has
mm,
these childhood emotions. And again, still has the alcohol, still has the food, still has the um, all these other elements that probably, I succumbed to when I was growing up. But now to like still be in that element and then be different and be experiencing something different, is a huge piece.
yeah, I was about to ask, like, do you feel like adopting a more spiritual path is what helped you realize like the richness and appreciate the city to where it actually feels like home now? Do you feel like without beginning a spiritual path and like the direction you've been going on the past few years, do you think you would have developed that understanding and felt that richness of the city and things like that?
No,
Appreciation for it?
yeah, there's really no, yeah, there's really, I can't even separate the two. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, cause the journey of, again, even the reason why I'm here, following my intuition, following an intuitive message. Um, yeah, that's a big part of, the spiritual, at least my spiritual path.
And I know this is like your interview, and there was something that came up today that I was listening to on a podcast that it kind of reminds me of New Orleans, where and like the differences in how you're talking about it, because it's basically a Buddhist principle of the hungry ghost. You ever heard of
Mm.
that?
Mm-mm.
It gives a feeling of like you're never satiated, always chasing something, always needing more, always achieving and always empty kind of feeling. And I feel like in New Orleans that can be such an easy trap to fall into, where desires and inhibition and always going towards I don't want to call it, like cheap thrills, but it's an easy place to have your desires met and still feel very
Mm,
empty,
mm,
if that makes sense. And also the way that you've kind of made it, it's like maybe now you're able to appreciate it, and it still has that heart-centered, I can be fulfilled here, I can move forward here, I can still have goals here, but I'm not always coming up on empty every time I go grab something, because everything is so accessible
right.
in New Orleans. Like you were saying, like you can drink at 15. It's accessible. You can, I mean, let's just be honest. Anything you want, any satiation you can desire, fill in the blank, can be found
Mhm.
in New Orleans. Food, sex, drugs. Like, let me just tell you what I'm thinking. And
Yeah, no,
so,
yeah,
and so,
true.
with everything like that at your fingertips, there, like I said, it's like chasing the hungry ghost. And I like I like how you say, because I do get that feeling from New Orleans, not only that it's a place where you can instantly meet all of your desires, but it's also very heart centered, and things are
Mm.
so opportunity is accessible there as well. And it seems like you've tapped into that source of it, and aren't always coming up empty all the time as well. Kind of
Mhm.
sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's played a huge role in peace in my one of the mantras or statements I've uh, adopted or taken on. I was like, oh, it's the same. They usually say about New York or L.A. or California or something. It's like, but in New Orleans, if one can make it here, uh, they can make it anywhere.
Ah,
I was like, it's like, yo, uh, yeah, yeah, because everything is just, is right there. And so,
mhm,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was very. I mean, even growing up, I mean, like there were a few years, and I think we're currently a little bit. Let's just keep it at the previously, but even growing up, we were like the murder capital, per
mhm.
capita within the country for a few years in a row. And so yeah, there was just all these different sides that, again, if one doesn't live here and they're just kind of like I was talking about visiting temporarily, you could catch a glimpse of it and maybe again read a headline or see a movie or listen to a band or attend a festival every year, but it's different waking up to it and like quote unquote trying to survive or quote unquote trying to thrive or doing one's best to thrive or quote unquote looking to evolve and ascend or transcend or transform or whatever one may call it within that environment. And it's like, okay, this is the energy I have, I say have to work with, but I mean choose to, whatever the case may be. If I live here, I'm choosing to, or this is again the energy I have to work with. And so it then becomes, the journey or process of working with that energy and growing from there. So
Yeah. So, like, with all that being said, and thank you so much for being open and sharing, are there, like, certain like, we have are there certain teachings or practices, that are contributing to your life now and maybe even contributed to you, obviously, on this path of, like, appreciation and finding the depths of life and, like, a deeper meaning? I mean, is that how you would phrase it, maybe? That your spiritual path has kind of allowed you to find a deeper meaning to life? Or how would you describe what your spiritual path has added to you and things like that?
yes, I would add that my answer to that is yes, because it also kind of matches my personality. So I've heard for listeners or audience members, another Sharon, my astrological sign is a Scorpio, and so I've heard New Orleans referenced as a Scorpio city or a Scorpion city, a city with
Mm,
Scorpion energy,
okay.
and so yeah, from that lens, I totally get it. Because
Mm,
again, growing up here, I might have experienced or seen some things on the surface level or in the immediate lens or whatever. Because again, even when I say that, I'm also thinking about like billboards, right? Like there's just tons of billboards about food and restaurant and bars and alcohol. Uh, that's probably like 80% of the billboards. Eat at
mm.
here, have a drink there, party at there, da 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 da. And so now I lost my track of thought, but
Also,
what was
plenty
the
of
question
churches on
again?
every corner too.
Yeah, we have tons of churches. So what was the question again?
Basically, like, how you feel that your, spiritual beliefs if has there been well,
Oh, oh,
first,
oh.
I asked you if, like,
Yeah,
your
I got it.
spiritual path has added to your like, the step that you have found, and then are there certain teachings or practices that really contributed to that process or even would say that are contributing now to your process and life? And I was like,
Yeah, so it's definitely helped me see things beneath the surface, below the
mm,
surface.
mm,
Because again, like I said, growing up here, certain things being so accessible and available, and then like you said, it going to reaching a point, a culmination to where there was still like this emptiness there,
mm,
or this need to like, okay, I need to do more and more and more because I'm searching for something. And then so to have everything available and accessible and still not reach fulfillment or be feel
yeah,
fulfilled, then comes the question like, oh, okay, well, what is there something wrong with me? Is it the environment? Is it what's going on? And then so again, to be able to reach some sense of fulfillment within the same environment and be like, oh, okay, there's just a whole nother side or a whole different lens. And again, like we have shared or stated before, it's like necessarily the city on some level or to some degree hasn't changed,
mm,
but it's easy to see that I've changed.
yeah,
And so now I do see the change and I am experiencing a change or the difference within myself outside of, externally, because I go to different events. I hang around, I'm still as active and especially even lately, I still feel like I have that celebratory or celebration party social energy going on. It's just the context that it's in expressed in and the way it's expressed and the way it's revealed and done is just totally different. And
Right.
so, um, yeah. So I totally see that here. I get it here, like real time.
So what do you feel like are the certain like practices and or teachings that contribute to your experience now? Like is there anything specifically that you like I don't want to say mantra, but to give mantra as an example, like is there any phrases that you've learned along the spiritual path that have really kind of changed and transformed you? Or, I don't know, maybe some meditation that contributes to your daily life, like things like that. What do you feel like you've picked up along the way and that maybe that you'll even want to express here on the podcast? Because there, I mean, big reason we're doing this interview is to maybe dig a little bit deeper as to like what's your background and like and also what we want to bring to this space.
Mhm.
A lot of it's what we've learned or how we've grown through our experiences on this spiritual journey. So, what are some of like the main ones that you've picked up along the way?
Yeah, so I can definitely share again with the audience, with the family members that are listening, because again, I'm calling everybody family now.
Hmm.
Not everybody, but the listener, the
I was,
community,
I
community
was
member.
about to say, James. I was like, y'all, that's a big step for James. It
Right, right. No, then let me get that clear. The listeners, not the general public. I'm not that expanded, but the
Yeah.
listeners to this podcast, y'all are
Mm. Oh,
family.
I love that. That's
And so, at least virtual, you know what I mean? Like, again,
yeah.
we still got to get to know each other. And anywho, uh, I almost lost the question again,
It's okay.
but
What it yeah,
I
the
know, I
contributing
got it. I
okay,
got
you
it.
got it. Okay.
Okay. So to share more in, uh, also, as Ray said, there's a lot of churches here. So New Orleans is also a very spiritual also and religious, town or city
Mhm.
or region. And so, yeah, so that even sparked my quest to, when I wasn't fulfilled,
Mm.
or I was only fulfilled to a certain degree through the church or through traditional, whatever I had been exposed to at that time, that spark that also was included in my curiosity of like, well, what's different? What else is out there?
Right.
And so probably in my early 20s, I got more into, I studied the Tao,
Mm.
um, and or Taoism, and some native traditions and cultures. And then probably in my late 20s, I got more into, yeah, so early 20s was like studying the Tao, studying indigenous cultures and traditions. Later 20s was more of the law of attraction, so forth and so on. Um, I would say early 30s. Since then, it's been a little bit more of, or what was added to the fold was more of like Eastern philosophies, but like in the Hindu tradition, but then also different African traditions and
Mm.
cultures. And so still indigenous, but like, I can't say the specifically West African traditions. I'm still learning about that. But definitely like Egyptian traditions, Egyptian Book of the Dead, Egyptian
Ah,
spirituality, and so forth, uh,
interesting.
or things more of East African. And
I had no idea.
yeah, huh?
I had no idea.
Oh, okay. Yes. That's yeah, definitely incorporated in my arsenal, in my repertoire. So, um, yeah. So lately, in most recent years, it's been practices out of India, and practices more so from northeastern Africa, and then South America. Obviously, still South American, some South American traditions for sure. So it's been like a trifecta or blend of those three in most recent years. And then the one benefit, well, really the thing that captivated me here was, for listeners, at one point I was part of a school of thought called Oneness, and it was based off a school called Oneness University out of India. And the thing that captured me or made that so special for my path at that time is it was the first place. Again, different things may have resonated for different people, but one of the practices that they had or things that they encouraged was to just be with it, just be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so after probably a few years of, not probably, after like 4 years of studying the law of attraction and kind of still like not really feeling like not getting it or feeling frustrated, it was the first place where I encountered and someone said, just sit and be with whatever's happening. And then the other piece that I interpreted in was inviting grace. So they did a practice, which is a common practice in different Hindu traditions or those traditions from, well, really, I guess all across the world. It's just called different things. But they did a practice called Diksha, which, again, through my interpretation, was just allowing grace to flow. And then so there was particular initiations or training to do that form of Diksha, which their form of Diksha was for awakening humanity and consciousness. So it was had specifically to do with, like, some people or some traditions have Diksha for opening the heart. Some traditions call, what they would reference as Dikshas, like laying on of the hands, even in like Christianity.
Can we
Bible.
give, would you describe like the definition? I know you said your interpretation was allowing grace to flow. Is there like an understood kind of definition though? Isn't Diksha just like a blessing kind of?
Yeah, it's a blessing. Okay. So it's a blessing. Yeah, it could be a blessing from a teacher or an enlightened person or from a certain lineage or tradition.
And so when James is saying like they have Diksha for what you were naming the different kinds.
Awakening.
So it's almost kind of in my head too, if people are familiar with Reiki or pranic healing, or mostly Reiki, like if you ever see Reiki videos, they'll say Reiki for anxiety, Reiki for depression. It's almost like different blessings with different intentions, allowing that to be the intention while giving the blessing. Just for people because Diksha, it's been such a long time since I've even heard you say that word. And like, even though I've been to a workshop and I am a certified Diksha giver as well, I think we all got certificates that time at that retreat we went on in Orlando. And so, I think I got a certificate there, but it's been so long since I've heard that word. I was like, I wonder if some people maybe listening today never heard of it. So, but yeah, I love how you interpret it as like it's allowing grace to flow. I love that one, and I just wanted to, just in case anybody was confused, So
I was with that school or participated in those activities for about 4 years, about 3.5 to 4 years. And so and again, that was my initial introduction back to the city, or, that was a big, huge of my introduction or reintroduction back to the city. And so basically for 4 years, I practiced or implemented just sitting and being and inviting in grace. And then, so that was a huge piece of my transformation, was like just cultivating how to be, just being. Yeah.
I ask you, and I actually think I want to talk about this on another episode. So if you just want to like either say yes or no, I want to talk about this, don't, it's fine. But so do you still, I already know the answer to this, but maybe other people don't. Since you followed that school of thought, I know personally that you don't anymore. Can you share a little bit of like why? And what you continue, because I feel like this goes under that question of like, what did you take and what's contributed to your process, and are there still some that you do or don't prescribe to? That makes
Yeah. So it was actually in the similar vein. It was like listening to intuition or following clues. And so what happened at that time, the local community here, like right towards the end of 2015, the group that I originally found in 2012, it dispersed. Like the person who founded the group here locally, she was like, got really busy in life, and the place where they were holding the meetings had went out of business. And so they were like, So she was like trying to find a place, but kind of like overwhelmed and this, that, and the third. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll host meetings in New Orleans because it was in a suburb outside of here until you find another place. But that never happened.
Hmm.
So that happened, and there was some other little extra community drama with that whole disbursement or disbandment of the group that may, come up in another episode. But again, it's kind of what I touch on when we speak of like, oh, falling out or, just detachment from a community, so to speak. But anywho, to kind of stick to the thing. So that happened. The local group fell apart. The founders of the school also in like 2015, 2016, really more like 2016, I guess. The founders of the school were retiring. And so their son and daughter-in-law were taking over. And then so some things were like shifting or changing with the school itself. And I really didn't resonate with the daughter-in-law and the son.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get that they, have benefits and, things are beneficial and da 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 da. It just, I didn't resonate with it. And then so there was one other thing. Yeah. And so that was a big piece of, there was a couple of other things, personal things that happened in my life that where, it was just super evident that a change was happening.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, okay. I kept trying to follow and go along with the changes that were occurring. But it at some point it became clear like, oh, okay, something else is a different direction is calling me or is speaking to me, or I'm supposed to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And then so I went that way, and and then so those are really it set the foundation of who I am and how I am, or at least my practice today. And that's a huge piece of. It's still how I facilitate meditations.
It is.
It's I still follow the same routine. There's the same. That was my training. That's the bulk of my certification at that time. As far as in the meditation space, I have other now experience and training in other traditions and our practices. But it just allowing. Oh, another thing I got from them was they were really big on having a personal connection with the divine and cultivating that personal connection with the divine. And it could be, again, I guess just like AA, to the divine or God to one's understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so they really never really forced one to adopt or accept one interpretation of the divine. They more so really set a tone for a space for people to find their own connection there, or to explore their own definition or their own. And so that was huge. And then so I got a big piece out of that. And again, to show the synchronicity is that when I was growing up, my mom never forced us to go to church when talking about religion and spirituality, because she wanted it to be our own decision. And she wanted us to have our own personal connection. So I didn't get baptized till I was like in my, since I was like 14. And so, but she wanted us to be our own decision. And so that always stuck in my head of like, or the way it evolved was like, oh, okay, spirituality in my unconscious or subconscious is that spirituality is, for me at least, in my destiny, quote unquote, is about personal connection. And so it's important that I feel that personal connection. I have that personal connection. I have that bond. I have that rapport, that interaction, or I have that belief or that feeling. And so, that was super important about the school, is like they definitely tailored to helping people discover they emphasize the importance of it, and then B, they actually use tools and techniques to help people like explore, well, what is my bond? What is my connection with the divine? What is my interpretation with the divine? Is there something I need to heal? Is there anything I need to clear out? And why, why are certain things happening or unfolding? So Yeah, that's a huge piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad that we went into that because I always found it so interesting that you did prescribe that school of thought, and like it was very I would say, I wouldn't say it was like, I don't know, we would talk about it almost at the beginning of every meditation. We would kind of reference the Oneness University and some of the teachings from them. And then slowly you stopped doing that. And I was like, I think I'd asked you about it. I was like, James, do you still do the oneness thing? You were like, so, kinda, but not really. And it was just like, and it was always kind of that, even though I noticed, like you said, the format was very similar, and like you took what you needed from it, and then you've allowed it to just let it go too, which I've always thought that was so interesting. I think it's really important to point out that it's okay if we step away from certain teachings or certain teachers and certain practices, and we're still allowed to take whatever we benefited from that path or those teachings or teachers, while also going our own way and maybe not referencing or serving. You know what I that makes,
Yeah, well, I definitely want to add in to the audience or members, family members here, to our family here. So for that, another cool thing about their school, which is again a same thing, how I roll anyway, or it's even more heightened or increased now, is that they had a take it or leave it facilitation anyway. So they, every time, I say every time, but in majority of the training, the classes, the workshops, they were like, if it resonates, great. If it doesn't resonate, let it go. Like they didn't force any doctrine or philosophy on anyone. They just say, hey, if something jumps out and you get it, perfect. If it doesn't resonate, one doesn't feel it, just let it go over, the head, or just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
And so the other key piece, I really love that, because it made me more open and receptive to, again, find my own way, find my own truth within this setting. And then also too, they also emphasize, especially in the training piece, that they always encouraged or repeatedly encouraged that to only, how can I best put this? The best time to share a teaching is once it becomes that person's truth. So like if I'm sharing or I'm encouraging, and I guess going back even to the podcast and things, that the topics that we cover or the experiences that we talk about, like once it becomes my truth, then I can then share it and facilitate and so forth and so on. So they were very heavy about like, something being a person's truth. And so if it's my truth, once it becomes my truth, that was the piece. It's like they didn't take ownership to any teaching. They would be like, okay, we're sharing this, but they're not like the authors of it, or they're not the originators of it. It's like, and so that practice or that energy or that culture was passed on of like, equally anything that I share at this point, it's I'm not the originator of it. I'm not the author of it. It is my truth though, which is why I share it. And so that was always a big piece of, so I mean, I literally did everything that they say do. Like what I share, what I got from it, and it's now my truth, which was their whole goal anyway. It's like, once something becomes, a person's truth, then it's theirs.
Yeah. I'll even share like through your meditations and through the exposure of that group. I do feel like that's where I first started to learn grace, and acceptance of where we are, because you would always say, I could be wrong. I feel like I've said it on the podcast before. Acceptance is the first, or awareness. Awareness is the first step. And so to me, that's where grace came in for me, that I actually, and hopefully I don't get emotional. It was the first time I didn't feel like I had to fix myself
Mm.
in that moment, you know, with having, see, I'm gonna cry, but like, you know, growing up Christian, it was always me to repent and rectify sin. If I was aware of that I was sinning, that I needed to, if I was aware of it, then there was even more pressure on how to fix it, how to stop it, how to manage it, how to do all these things. And it wasn't until I was exposed to that awareness is the first step that I just really felt like, okay, my only job today is to be aware of when this trigger comes up, be aware of when I'm not acting with the integrity that I want to be acting in. I don't have to change it. I don't have to manipulate myself at this moment. I don't have to set a goal list. I just have to be aware. I just have to know what I'm doing. I just need to be conscious of myself. And it was through that process with that consciousness and without having that weight on my shoulders all the time to change myself and, you know, forgive myself. And like even that was a relief. I didn't even have to forgive myself in that moment or ask for forgiveness. Like some things are just hard enough to be figuring out that you're doing that. So it's really taken a lot of weight off my shoulders and it's made my transformation easier because I also through them too. I could be making this up, but sometimes I would just go to meditation because I knew the energy, just being in the energy was beneficial. I also didn't have to meditate perfectly that day. I fell asleep through a lot of your meditations, James, and I don't think you ever took offense to that. But actually, I'm sure, and they even said before, I've heard them say it, like, they think that or maybe I'm making this up. I've heard it through someone, maybe not directly from them. But even people that fall asleep during meditations, they say some of them are the most enlightened because you don't even have to be awake in order to receive the energy. Like sometimes energy is more received when you are fully unconscious. Just like how sometimes music goes straight. You don't have to be aware of how the music affects you. It's actually, it's why you need to be aware of where you're placing yourself because your energy is always open. Anyways. So it was the first place I felt safe to fall asleep during meditations. I didn't have to care if I was too tired to go because I knew I was allowed to nap. And so all of those things were allowed. And yeah, I really love that about their teachings. And again, I don't reference them a lot or even look up their website anymore, but it was a huge part of my acceptance journey because awareness is the first step, and I think acceptance was my next step, and so on. Or maybe grace was my next step, and then acceptance was my next step, and evolving was after that. So maybe we need to name the podcast "Aware, Grace, Accept, Evolve." But awesome, James. Thank you for. Well, I just shared for a few minutes, but thank you for talking and entertaining me wanting to dive a little deeper into that because that's how I met you was through that train of thinking and ideas. So
Yes. And so for listeners, I used to travel at one point, like I was traveling, I was living in New Orleans, but I was still going to like nearby cities. So I'd go to one city, a nearby city where Ray was like every Tuesday. And then I'd go to another nearby city in a different direction twice a month on Wednesdays. And then I'd be in New Orleans hosting every Thursday. And then so I did that for a few years, really.
yeah.
And so yeah, that's been part of my journey of being back, of living back in the area. I've been rolling ever since. So
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right, James. Well, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up this segment?
Yeah, I think I am good. But
Let's see.
there was some other thing on there that you wanted to ask quickly or briefly. Okay.
I don't know what's going on with Blanche today. This is just, she's being a little much this today. Honey.
Okay.
I'm just trying to jump up here. Did I ask what currently inspires your spiritual path? Did Did I do that one?
Yeah, I think that was a piece of it, but I'll elaborate more on it.
Okay.
So,
So yeah, so James, what just as we're wrapping up, like what do you feel is currently inspiring your spiritual path?
so I remember I answered something similar to this recently at one a gathering because we were having a talking circle, and so even the techniques that I do at the talking circle is something I got through my training with Oneness University, and um, and so I remember I apologized to the group.
Hmm.
And I apologized, and I was like, if I've made any mistakes in the past, or if I'm also, whether the group felt like I did or not. Um, well, actually, let me just give more context to, for our listeners slash members here. Um, the previous Friday at the Talking Circle, I was I was sharing about um, a friend that had passed away recently.
Hmm.
And so when I got to sharing about it, I know sometimes I could get really sensitive when I'm sharing and really get into the emotion. And so when I was sharing about it, yeah, I just the emotion was just really strong. So it
Hmm.
was kind of funny the way the meeting ended, just because I wasn't like fully there. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of like caught in the emotion. And then but then, so it ended, the meeting ended, but then as usual, we stayed in a park continuing to talk. So we talk intentfully, or we listen or communicate with intention of about an hour. And then for about 30 minutes, however long, we just, have more of a loose communication. So yeah, we stayed in the park probably like another hour or some change. So the following Friday, we were talking and sharing, and I said, oh, I was just because I felt some type of way so like I was apologizing about the previous Friday if I had gotten like tense or emotional towards the end of the meeting. And so I was like, I'm apologizing for anything in the past. I'm also apologizing for any future mistakes I may make. and and so I told the group, I was like, I'm just doing my best to share um all the gifts that I've received in the past few years, or the
Hmm.
benefits I feel like I've gained in the past few years. Like I don't have it figured out. Like I'm just doing my best to like try to share everything I feel like I've received, or again that may have, not may, but that's become my truth. So I really, and I say this to the group, I don't always know what that looks like. It's kind of evolving as we go. So to answer your question, that's basically what's the inspiration, or that's the frequency, that's the vibe right now. It's like, oh, okay, like I've had this transformation, I've had this shift in my life, and again, been able to be harmonious, or be more harmonious, be more healthy, be more aware, be more present, be more loving, be more in tune with my emotions, be more angry and let it go, when need be, all these sorts of things. And be depressed and not get stuck in depression,
Hmm.
and or be sad and welcome sadness. So all these sorts of things, it's
Hmm.
like, and I've grown and you know what I mean, so much from it. So it's like, okay, now the next question is, what are all the beautiful ways I can share it? And and yeah, it's almost like one of those things of when people say, once someone takes like the blue pill or whatever pill it is, there's no turning back. Or once someone has seen truth or something, there's like really no way to revert back. Or when I say quote unquote truth, that person's truth, once something's been revealed, there's no way to turn back. And so now the motivation is like, okay, well, I'm aware, so now let me share. Sharing is caring.
Hmm.
And it's fun. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the poem "The Guest House" by Rumi?
I've heard it before. I don't know it verbatim, but I've heard it.
I kind of want to read
But
it before we
okay,
leave
go. Yeah, go for it.
because something you just said made me think a lot about it, and it's one of my favorite poems.
Mm.
So it's called "The Guest House." This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them all at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Rumi.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
And
Beautiful.
I love that one just because kind of how you were saying it's like, yeah, there's an acceptance that I think we do here, but also I think there has been a level of invitation. We've been inviting the emotions. We're allowing them to stay. We're allowing them to speak, allowing them. Well, I saw you kind of roll your eyes for a second. Maybe not allowing them to stay, but
Well, I
giving
was
them
more,
space to stay and giving them space to be heard. And
because the eye roll was more about the invitation part. That was my brain doing a quick assessment of my invitations. But go ahead.
yeah,
My
and some of,
conscious invitations.
and some of them, like it said, unexpected arrivals. We just
Right.
never know when one is going to visit. And I like that poem because it's kind of tells a lot about the journey that I think that maybe we're all taking in different ways, but it would be nice if each time we felt one of these emotions, we just greeted them. We said hello, allowed them to sit, give them some tea, ask them what's up, and then allow them to go when it's time for them to go. And, and I've noticed treating my anger with respect, even like my depression. I actually, in a way, I respect my depression. And I like that you used that word and that you admitted that those are feelings you have, because sometimes people don't like to admit it. But there is a respect there. It's not that my depression has come to debilitate me. I use it as a way of a gauge that something is debilitating me. Something has ran my energy to the ground, and my depression is only there as a visitor to say, hey, you're run down right now. Let me tell you about it. This place, this time that you're sharing with this person, it's really taking from you. Like it's trying to tell me something. It's not trying to ruin my day. And just like anger's not there to make us lash out at the world. It could just be there to say, hey, there's a boundary you're not setting. Can we talk about it? It's yeah. So it's one of my favorite little poems.
I even like to, even especially with anger, I like to think, oh, there's something I'm passionate about,
Yeah.
and like follow the passion. Sometimes
Mhm.
what comes up as well too. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. Well, James, thank you for sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the interview, Ray, and even like to listen to the syntax of those words. Like we even have an view, so it's a view more entering into a view through, expression and depth, or like you say, through invitation. So thank you for the invitation to do so.
Y'all, James has a really unique way of viewing words, and I really like it. Y'all may not get what he just did there, but this is something I really like about James. He can see words very interesting, or he can break them down very well and find multiple ways to look at them. It'll probably come out a lot through the podcast, and maybe you've heard him do it. Can almost guarantee you've heard him do it before. It's just something I've noticed,
Oh, perfect.
as my friend, he's done that a lot over the years.
And also, if people want to, this is coming through in the spirit as well. If people want to get more insight into my journey, or at least the frequency in words. So I do have a book that was inspired by my return back to the city and my insights, and I guess just vibration and frequency of that whole process. And so it's a collection of, on the surface, I call it a collection of quotes, photographs, and affirmations. But underneath the surface, there's definitely something to it, something there. And so it's called the Graceful Reflection.
I got the book right here.
Oh, thanks. So, yeah, very cool. And so I have a website, or my digital page, because I like those words better, speaking of words. is jameseditor.com, and I guess another revelation or truth. So my middle name is actually Editor. And so when people see that, I even had a close friend of mine recently, and this is if she ever hears this, she was like, what's up with Editor? Because it's also on my Facebook page. And so she's like, what's up with Editor and on your name? And I was like, that's my middle name. Like, we've been friends for 5 years. But anywho, so yeah. So listeners, friends, family, you can go to jameseditor.com, get the book. It's up also on multiple different platforms, Amazon, book, Goodreads, Barnes and Noble. If you do order it through the site, just you might send me a message or something, and I'll do an autograph for you. Yeah, and actually there'll be some other cool things coming up here in the very near future. So yeah, check it out. www.jameseditor.com. Oh, and you can find me on a lot of different platforms with James Editor: Twitter, Facebook. I have an Instagram, but that might be personal. I can't recall. Yeah, the best things is probably Facebook or Twitter. And yeah, so thank you all so much. Thank you for, again, letting me share and listening.
You're so welcome, Jay. I'm actually looking through and all the dog-eared pages that I have, because I wanted to read a page, but I didn't know if you would want me to.
Let's save it. Let's keep it. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll keep it in the treasure chest.
I had a feeling. You were like,
pull it out.
But yes, everyone, this is what the book looks like. And yeah, go grab it. Very proud of my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Love this little book. And actually, I think I told James once that his poems remind me of Rumi. Actually, yeah, told you that before. But maybe you forgot, and that's okay. But
I remember that.
Yeah, and I yeah. So thank you for writing that. So all right, guys. So yeah, do all the normal things. Subscribe, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Email us at graceacceptevolve@gmail.com. Continue to share your stories. James, I don't know, if you feel comfortable sharing something that someone's told you over the past week or so. Just, you don't have to say their names or anything like that, but if you feel open to sharing some feedback you've gotten on the podcast, or thank anybody, maybe we can just thank. Maybe we could say a name. Thank you, so and so, for.
Well, I think all the listeners they know who they are. They're clear about who they are, that have sent messages and sent comments or emails, and so I just want to encourage and for more. Like, we appreciate them. I share them with Ray, or we talk about them, and I'm always thankful to reply or share more insight. Like I say, for friends who have my phone that send the text messages and how much they appreciate the episode. Oh, the biggest thing I've heard from it is I've had multiple people say, I'm really getting a lot from it. And so that always feels really good. It's it
does,
to have the listeners to go through the different episodes. And actually, I guess this was a good one. This would be perfect. So my friend Claire Bigley, which is Bigley, she actually is a musician and a creative. She did the intro music on the episodes that are on the physical the audio podcast. And so you can check her out at Soul Song Quest, I believe is her website. But you can find it. You can find a link in the body of the podcast episode. But we had lunch yesterday, and she said that she's in October. So in one of the episodes that we done, she's still in October, because she said she realized some of the things that we say and share, she likes to sit and digest them. And so she really wants to sit with it and really take it in. So sometimes she'll be I might be making this up, but I think she said sometimes she'll listen while she's gardening, and she'll she wants to really absorb what's being said or the insights and the quotes and different things. So that was quite beautiful to hear her say that.
Very
So
cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Claire, for composing our music and for listening. We
Yes.
appreciate it. We appreciate everybody that's showing up with us every week just to, you know, be a part of this. I mean, to me, it feels like a talking circle. I feel like almost we should rename it, but to the talking circle. But I actually think I looked that one up and it's already taken. So this is what we got. But I do like the vibe. I like the vibe of just coming and chatting.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
All right, y'all.
everyone.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.